What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 10-7 MMA Show. And we are kind of at the finale for 2024. Not that the content's going to stop. We're going to still have content rolling. We released a video yesterday all about Colby Covington. And we also released a dope promo video if you guys want to check it out. It's me and Justin commentating for the Fusion Fight League. And it's something that we've talked about several times on the show. Fusion Fight League is based out of Montana. It's a tremendous organization. And we've been having a blast commentating for them. So we chopped up some footage from the last few shows that we've done. And yeah, check it out. Let us know what you think. It's getting a decent amount of views so far. And yeah, we would really appreciate your feedback. Justin, before we get into our end of year show, our award show for today, well, and by the way, Western Mass Climber says detention for tardiness. We were 1 minute late. Come on. But Justin, what do you think? What is your feeling coming out of 2024 now that we've closed out with the Tampa Bay main event, Colby Covington getting smoked by Joaquin Buckley? What's your takeaway? What did you think of the year as a whole as a UFC fan?
Man, crossing the 300 mark, guys. Well, how incredible was that? UFC 300. I mean, it's a milestone, 100, 200, 300. These only come, essentially the third century, I'd like to say, of MMA. I thought it was an incredible year. I thought there was some great fights. Obviously, I mean, every year there's great fights, but the thing that sticks out to me the most is the improvement of the sport. And I'm not talking about any set fighter particular, but the evolution of the sport is constantly evolving. Obviously from the 90s when it used to be just lock two guys in a cage and there was no rules, to the early 2000s to where, guys with single, up until 5-10 years ago when guys could be good at one discipline. But really now in 2024 going into 2025, we're seeing the full evolution of the sport where people aren't wrestlers, people aren't grapplers, people aren't boxers. People are full MMA fighters, and I think that's the biggest difference I see from 2024 to past years.
For sure. And yeah, talking about one-dimensional fighters, you've talked about that many times, and it just doesn't work. I guess it's not really a great example. It's kind of a great example, but not really, because I don't even know what you think of Kron Gracie, but he is kind of like a very one-dimensional.
Sucks.
Yeah, and so he can't really. You saw what happened against Bryce Mitchell, and even his previous opponent just gets straight dominated.
How embarrassing.
And that's the thing. It's like we're now seeing and understanding, and that's what the beauty of the UFC is. I mean, what's up, Tyrone? Welcome. One of the most amazing things about this sport, and Justin can attest to this, is that it taught the world what real fighting is. People thought it was Taekwondo at one point. Other people thought it was karate, and the disciplines would only fight within their own disciplines. People thought wrestling. People thought jiu-jitsu. People thought judo, right? Now we have one platform and one main arena where everybody can test everything simultaneously and we get to figure it out. That's what drew me into the UFC from the get-go. It's a giant science experiment to see what truly works and what truly doesn't in an actual combat situation, and what we've now come to the conclusion. And by the way, it's still evolving, which is so dope.
What do you think is, if you were going to have to say one base is the best, what would you say is the best right now?
The one base that is the,
if you were going to say, hey, look, you
have
to change in a traditional aspect, you can't just train in everything. What would you recommend people train in?
I think there's one that I'm going to say that I think still is probably at the top, but I don't know if it will continue to be at the top. And I'm very curious to see what happens in the next few years, but I still think it's some form of freestyle wrestling. I think that seems to still be the most dominant base. Because, I mean, you consider what Khabib and Islam do in that same vein, right? Freestyle wrestling. I know they came up in the Sambo background, but I guess that still seems to be the most dominant form. But then we've had interesting things happen with people like Alex Pereira, Izzy. A lot of kickboxers come in with enough wrestling to get by in terms of staying off their back, standing up, or getting back to their feet, and then being able to utilize this supreme ability in striking. So like I would say currently, but it might be changing, but currently freestyle wrestling. But let's hear your professional opinion on this.
I agree with you 100%. And I just was curious because I know you come from a kickboxing background, you train in kickboxing. When you talk about, here's the thing, and I'm going to squash this argument, or I'm going to try to anyways. It's absolutely freestyle wrestling or folk style wrestling, or at least coming from that background, because it's the hardest of everything. Grappling is easy. When you get tired, you roll to your back. Kickboxing is easy. You just kind of back away from your partner, play range. When you're in a wrestling, that's why you only wrestle for 7 minutes in college, because it's just too intense. Now, as a wrestler, I can dictate, I can take a striker down. I can hold good position on a grappler. Now, you mentioned guys like Alex Pereira, Pereira and other guys like him, Israel Adesanya. Like, these guys are anomalies. They are so good at their craft that they can get away with it. It's just like when the Oda Machida was fighting, and people are like,
Mhm.
"Oh my God, his karate style, like karate, traditional karate is king." And Stephen Wonderboy, oh my God, these guys are anomalies. When you take UFC champions from the 90s to the early 2000s, 2010 to 2020 to now, it's like they've done the numbers. It's always the wrestlers there. I'm not saying kickboxers can't win. Alex Pereira, obviously, arguably one of the best ever. But again, who's like Alex Pereira? Israel Adesanya, again, okay, an anomaly. Anderson Silva, an anomaly. Like the Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he was able to take traditional karate. But it's such a small group of people. It's not like you have a dozen guys coming in doing traditional karate and winning. You have two. It's not like you have a dozen or even 10 guys coming in doing straight kickboxing. You have Alex Pereira, you have Israel Adesanya. So, in my professional opinion, I'm not saying it's 100%, but as a majority, freestyle wrestling is the most freestyle wrestling, and if you want to say sambo, is the most dominant art to transition into MMA.
Do you ever see a point in the near future, or maybe 4 or 5 years down the line, where that next crop of fighters, everybody will have such a solid foundation and base in wrestling, such that we will no longer see so much wrestling? Case in point, an example would be, we see the Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington fight. Both of those fights, they barely went to the ground, right? Because I think maybe they both felt their wrestling or the ground game nullified each other, and we ended up seeing kickboxing matches. Do you ever wrestling will always be an important fundamental base, and if somebody lacks it, they're going to get hammered on the ground. But do you ever foresee a point in mixed martial arts and the UFC in particular where now everybody has such a strong base that we rarely ever see a fight go to the ground, or we see it much more infrequently?
No, I mean, here's the thing with the UFC. Like, when you talk about MMA and the UFC, it's two separate entities, And in MMA, you look at like the PFL; those are all going to be the Russian wrestlers going on that didn't get to the UFC. The UFC is going to favor strikers. All right, the UFC it's always going to favor strikers. That's why Alex Pereira's got in the position he's been in, because of his striking ability, and the UFC encourages striking over wrestling. So I always think wrestling will be the most dominant sport no matter what, and not only from a technical standpoint, from the mental strength standpoint. You don't only learn technique in wrestling; you learn how to battle and deal with perseverance and fucking, hey, we're down by points right now. We got to figure a way out. In grappling, a lot of guys, when you get tired in wrestling, you can't take a break. When you get tired in grappling, again, even if I'm losing, I can pull guard, catch my breath, and start attacking from bottom. Same thing with boxing. Same thing with all the other arts. Wrestling is by far the toughest combat sport in the world. It always has been. It always will be. Anybody that says otherwise has never been in a college wrestling room. It's not just the strength, it's the mentality. It's not just the technique, it's the mentality that wrestling teaches you over boxing. I've been in world-class boxing gyms. I've worked with world-class boxing trainers. They don't have the same mentality as that gritty, hard-nosed wrestler. You know what I mean? Like, it's the things that you're taught in wrestling, the perseverance you have to go through, and the learning curve of getting your ass beat. I know that's in everyone. Oh, kickboxing, you come in, you get your ass beat. Yeah, you're right. But in wrestling, it's different. When you get knocked out, that fucking sucks. But you wake up and you're like, oh, what happened? You're like, oh, you got knocked the fuck out. But when you're and you lost in wrestling, when a guy's grinding on you and you're tired and you're like, fuck, I got to do this, but I don't have the energy to do it, but I got to muster up the way, or I have to find a way to persevere. Those are things that you use for the rest of your life, whether it's in your work, like your mental grind. I have learned. I've trained with some of the best boxing coaches, kickboxing coaches. Joel Casamayor, world champion. He was an Olympic world champion. I trained with him for years. Kara Rowe, 18-0 world champion, trained with her. Things that I learned in boxing and kickboxing, I don't transition over into my normal day life. I don't transition it over into my work ethic. Things I learned in wrestling, I use every single day. My attitude, the way I present myself, the way I carry myself, the way I'm confident. That's from wrestling. That's not from MMA. That's not from kickboxing. That's from wrestling, because I've been to hell and back multiple times, and when you're on the wrestling mat, that's fucking hell. There's nothing enjoyable about being in a wrestling match. The only time that's enjoyable is when your hand gets raised. That's it. And think about it, that's all you're wrestling for. Like, you're not getting money, you're not getting gratification. All you're really wrestling for is at the end of the match you get your hand raised, and it's like, fuck, that's it. So it's such a small gratification, but the life lessons learned in wrestling, you use every single day in your normal job. I mean, fuck, if you didn't tell me any better, I would think you're a wrestler. The way you hustle, the way you grind. The way you grind isn't the way how normal people grind. You grind like you've been wrestling your whole life, and your back's against the wall, and you have another choice. And I always think wrestling will be king because of those aspects.
I've heard a lot of other fighters talk about the grind of wrestling and say that on wrestling days are the worst days. Even if they've wrestled their entire lives, they don't look forward to it. And that's very interesting, because I was telling Justin earlier today, I went back and sparred. I've been having some issues with you can see my wrist here is in a brace, and I haven't really done proper pad work in a little bit, but here and there. But it always keeps seeming to make my wrist work every time I do it. But I thought, sparring would be okay, because we're not swinging for the fences. But yeah, we went into sparring today, and I was telling Justin how much fun it was and how amazing it is. And you don't really hear that people say that about wrestling. Like, kickboxing is a blast, I think. Sparring is really, really fun. But I do get that wrestling is a grind. And so that makes a lot of sense. Couple things. We got Johnny in the chat. Just want to highlight some of his comments. Johnny, I believe, might be new to the show, so welcome. Thank you so much for joining.
Johnny, I just trained with Tatiana this morning. She looks great. Her and Patchy, her boyfriend Patchy Mix, world champion. They were in grappling this morning. She looks great. She looks ready. I can't wait to see her win the belt.
Very cool. And now he also says Kayla is going to ragdoll Juliana. I kind of think so too. Hate to say it. I think Kayla is just from another dimension.
I mean, but it's a great setup. It's a great setup to bring Amanda back and make this big Hollywood fight. And I really think that's what the UFC is trying to do. They want her to go in there and ragdoll her, so we can be like, all right, let's bring our GOAT back, and it's going to be a huge pay-per-view for the women's championship.
And I think Amanda wants to come back. Last thing, man, I'm going to disagree with this. Johnny says Ankalaev will submit Alex. I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
And Ankalaev's not really that big of a grappler. I think he's been mischaracterized as like primarily a grappler. He's a striker. Look at his last fight against Rakic. He does have the grappling base, but by the way, Alex is, Justin, you tell me if you agree with this. A lot of people have said, look, people think, you can just take down Alex and submit him, but he's so strong. And that also, I think, is going to play a factor into whether or not you're going to be able to get him on the ground. And not to mention, to get him on the ground, you got to come in and avoid the knees, avoid the elbows, avoid his precision strikes. And remember, the difference about Alex and most other fighters is he throws a lot of his strikes with no tell. Possibly because of his physiology, he's able to still generate a lot of momentum and speed and energy without having to wind up or turn his hips. Justin, what do you think? Do you agree, disagree, or do you have a different stance?
Even stronger for taking Alex down is his range. He has perfect range all the time. He's never too far in. He's never too far away. That is frustrating to grapplers, man. And I'm speaking from experience. When you have long legs and long reach, and you can keep me at the back of your punches, the back of your kicks, and I can never close that distance. I mean, that's besides being, an insane athlete, which he is, besides being an insane kickboxer, which he is, besides being strong, which he is, besides being big, which he is, all these other factors, the primary is his range. He doesn't let you get close to him. The only guys who lets get close to him are other strikers. He's not going to let a wrestler like Sean, he's not going to let Sean Strickland get close to him because, hey, believe it or not, guys, I know Sean. I talked to him today. I actually talked to Sean today. I had a really good conversation with Sean today. It was just him and I at the locker bay. We sat there and talked for 5 or 10 minutes, just chopping up life. And me and Sean talk a lot, but it's usually just us talking shit back and forth. But to talk to him, and he was a real person today, man. And I mean, I shouldn't say he's a real person today. Like, he's always real to me. But just to talk to him and talk about, his hopes, his highs and lows. And, it's, Sean said he said something that really resonated with me. He says, when you expect something, the only expectation you should have is to expect disappointment. Because I was asking him about his title fight, like, hey man, like, how relieved were you when you got the title fight? Because I'm sure you expected it. And I know we're kind of getting off kilter here, but it was just I wanted to bring this up about Sean. And if I had more time, I was going to do an interview with him, and he's open to doing the interview. I just had to get to my client. But yeah, I asked him, I was like, hey, like how happy are you now that you got the title fight? He was like, honestly, I don't really care. Like, I deserve it, but I didn't expect it. I was like, what? Or he's like, I expected it, but I didn't expect it. And I'm paraphrasing, so it wasn't exactly what he said. I goes, well, what do you mean by that? He goes, when you expect things, the only thing you can expect to do is get disappointed. And I was like, wow, that's that's fucking deep, because he's absolutely right. When you expect things, the only expectation you should have is to be expect to get disappointed. And he says he's very grateful he got it, but if he didn't get it, he wasn't going to fret about it. He's going to keep fighting. He just keep fighting for the UFC and so on and so forth.
And I think where my takeaway from that, because like I was saying something similar today. Me and Louisa were talking about kind of a similar idea. But obviously for Sean and for other people that are going for what, you know, particular goals, you do your best. I think you still work hard. You train like Sean's doing, like he does every day. Sean's the guy that everybody says, and Justin has said this many times, he's always in the gym, whether or not he's training or supporting his teammates or whatnot. So you do everything you can do. And then at the end of the day, the actual outcome, the actual result, you cannot control, and you must live with it however it falls. That's kind of my takeaway from it. And that's the way that I also try and view things as well, which is a very healthy mindset. You focus on what you can affect and not what you cannot. And there you go. So words.
Something else he said too. Something else he said that stuck out to me, because again, it was a good 10-minute conversation. I told him, I was like, hey man, you know, I really look up to you as a fighter. Your style is exactly what I wanted. I want to walk guys down. You know, unfortunately, I just wasn't be able to come together. And he said something that I'm going to remember for a long time too. He's like, honestly, Justin, you were put in a bad. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but about being put in a bad situation with short notice fights. And he goes, unfortunately, guys like me, we can't just be good. We have to get lucky too. And he goes, he's like, you're fucking tough. You're a dog. I've seen you fight, but unfortunately you have to get lucky in this sport too. And he's very fortunate that he feels that he's gotten really lucky as well.
I think that's true to some extent in all walks of life. A little bit of luck in there, and just try and stay prepared and set yourself up for things to manifest and come together the best way possible. But yeah, for sure, we need a little bit of that luck. And sometimes maybe when things have worked out the way we want, we don't necessarily want to attribute it to luck, but there's always that element in there, a little bit of roll of the dice. So yeah, that's great words and great wisdom from a champion, maybe soon to be two-time champion, return to the belt. And we're going to see that in, what is it, February, right? Where they're fighting in Sydney? February 8th. Okay, here we go. Well, now on that note, let's get into 2024, which in my opinion, right? And, you know, I watch all these different MMA shows and MMA podcasts. I've seen people complain and this and that about undeserved title shots or whatnot, things that have gone down in the UFC. But when I look back, I don't know what people are talking about. I think this was the most incredible year in the world of the UFC and mixed martial arts in my entire life by a landslide. I thought it was phenomenal. And that's something to say, that's something special to say, given that still arguably the greatest star in the sport, maybe that's waning and maybe that's coming to an end, but Conor McGregor did not even fight this year, and he was scheduled to fight in June. It was a disappointment when he didn't, but that being said, nevertheless, I still think it was such a phenomenal year, and that is a sign of progress and growth for the UFC as an organization and as a brand, as well as all the other fighters that are in there, just so talented, so exciting and interesting. And again, we also have the rise of, you know, one of the coolest fighters of all time, greatest fighters of all time, which we're gonna get to later. But anyways, without further ado, let's get into a review of 2024. And I picked a couple topics here that we are going to touch on, and we're going to start off with favorite new fighter of the year. So Justin, I don't know if you have a thought on this. I'm going to tell you my favorite fighter, new fighter of the year. New is relative. It's not like he debuted in the UFC this year, but I feel like he came to a lot of people. He came on the radar of a lot of folks this year. And here, let me show you who it is. I've got kind of clips of everything queued up here for my choice. And then Justin, I'm going to turn over for your pick in this category, but it's Peyton Talbot. Peyton Talbot, the man, the legend. He's so cool to listen to in interviews, and he is a force to be reckoned with. He is incredible. He was like a minus 1100 in his last fight, and he got a knockout in like 8 seconds, 10 seconds. I don't know, something crazy, but just a little clip on Peyton Talbot. If you don't know who he is, now you know.
Two, depending if you get knocked out the first one, then you just get hit once, and then it's lights out.
But it doesn't matter how good you are, you're gonna get slapped. Like I could come out of a bare knuckle fight unscathed based on my opponent, I feel like.
Mike Perry.
I probably put my lights out. That's a big deal.
Just funny dude, honest, sincere, genuine, awesome fighter. Justin, if you have, or maybe this doesn't necessarily even have to be a fighter that's new on the scene, but is there a fighter that now has moved to the top of your list this year for whatever reason? And if so, why?
Absolutely, man. And I know it's going to sound generic, but I'm going to explain my piece, because he wasn't my favorite fighter coming in. And I know you guys, I talk shit about a lot of guys, and I don't really talk shit. I just give my opinion about them. There's a big difference between talking shit and giving your opinion. Alex Pereira is my new favorite. I did not like him. Let me get this straight. I didn't not like him, but I didn't like him when he came onto the scene. Coming from a straight kickboxing base, getting his title shot within 3 fights. I thought he was gifted. I thought the UFC brought him on, because they just want this, these fights with Adesanya. And once he finally fights a wrestler, that he's just going to get rolled through and steamrolled. Alex Pereira is the guy. Alex Pereira is the GOAT. He's come onto the scene in less than a couple years. He's won 2 world championships. He has fought short notice. He's saved shows. He's broken his bones, or he's broken his, excuse me, guys. He's broken his feet. I remember he went into a fight with a broken toe. He shows up. He knows how to persevere. Look at his Khalil Roundtree fight. Are you kidding me? Like, dude, he almost lost his belt. He comes back, puts him away later on. Guys, this guy is dude, like, how can you not love this guy? This guy doesn't, in the thing that really I like a lot, that I didn't think I'd like a lot about him, he doesn't even speak English. And I usually relate to fighters through their interviews. But Alex is such a good fighter, and I can't get enough of this guy. I love watching him fight. And again, I'm a wrestler. This is a kickboxer, and that's why it's foreign to me, because usually I'll be tracked like Justin Gaethje. Ooh, the highlight, Justin Gaethje. That's one of my favorite fighters. I love him because he comes from a wrestling base and he has knockout. This guy doesn't even have any wrestling. He's a blue belt in grappling, per se, that people say. I mean, I don't know what he really belted is, but his belt rank is low, but it doesn't matter. He keeps getting up against these tough guys, and he keeps putting their lights out. And, I know everyone's saying, oh, Ankalaev's going to take him down. I don't think so, man. I think this guy's been focused on his wrestling, and he's using his striking, although he's primarily still striking. But I think in his camps, he's not focused on his striking. He already has that, and that's something he's doing that a lot of guys don't, including myself. I was a really, really high-level wrestler in college. In MMA, I was a high-level wrestler. Man, I would submit everybody. My grappling is really good. But as I grew in the sport, I fell in love with striking. Why? Because it's easier. I started. Striking is way easier than grappling. It's way easier than wrestling. It's equivalent to grappling, but it's way easier. So I fell in love with striking, and I started knocking guys out. I'm like, oh shit, I don't have to wrestle anymore. You look at Pereira, on the other hand, he is already good at wrestling. Now he's transitioning to the harder aspect of the sport, which is wrestling, and that's all he's focused on. He's living off his striking, man. I just can't get enough of this guy, and I have so much respect for him, what he's done in such a short period of time. Alex Pereira has become one of my favorite, and I know it sounds generic, but again, he wasn't always my favorite, and that's why I want to bring his name up.
Well, we're definitely going to be talking about Alex Pereira more during the show today. All right, but moving on to next category, most improved fighter of the year. And it doesn't even have to be anybody on this list, but I pulled up a video just kind of showing a bunch of fighters that I think folks have said, hey, these could be the most improved fighter, right? And in his S tier, he has at the top, and my choice is not going to be somebody on even his S tier, but we got Dan Hooker, Diego Lopez, and Renato Moicano, and then we've got all these other folks. So I just wanted you to take a look, or maybe you already have somebody in mind, but Justin, I'll turn it over to you first this time. Who is your most improved fighter of the year 2024, and why?
No questions asked. This answer is very simple. I'm glad you sent me these before, but you know what the cool part is I'm reading, before we started the show, I just had guys come to me quick. Alex Pereira. This one's easy. He's in the A-list. Joaquin Buckley.
I was going to say the same.
I am so blown away by him. He became world famous for that spinning back kick knockout. By the way, the guy that he knocked out in that fight went to the PFL, and he's won like $2 million in the PFL tournament. So it kind of worked out for him as well. Anyways, back to Joaquin, at middleweight, he had 8 wins and like 6 losses, or 8 wins and 5 losses. He was essentially a journeyman at the middleweight weight class. Goes down to welterweight. He just knocks off Colby Covington with ease. Improves to 6-0 as a welterweight. Joaquin Buckley is the truth. I don't care for his mic skills. I still think he sounds terrible on the mic, but from a skill standpoint, he is the most improved. He's the most deserving fighter on that list.
Yeah, I'm glad we agree. And maybe because he's so recent, he just had this tremendous knockout, and he's pretty much that's the last fight we're going to be thinking about until January 11th. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's really much of an argument. Even if you look at some of these guys, I mean, Dan Hooker has come back, but who has had 4 wins this year, 4 in a row, and now he's 6-0. Wait, hold on, I'm looking at this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, he's 6-0 in this brand new division. And Vicente Luque, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and he won by knockout. Who's done that? That's insane. And Colby Covington, just pure domination. And say what you will about Colby, but now he's dropped to 9th. but he was at the time ranked 5th. Whether it was deserved or undeserved, regardless, he annihilated Colby. We'll talk about Colby later too, but obviously Colby, quote unquote, doesn't agree. I don't know if it's real or not. I actually think maybe he does believe his own nonsense now.
He told me that, or he not me. He told that presser that it was 1-1 going into the third, and he felt himself wearing on Joaquin Buckley. And the only thing I felt him wearing on Joaquin Buckley were Joaquin's hands on Colby's face.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And I mean, so Joaquin just completely dominated him, and in a way that was way more dominant than what Leon Edwards did to him. Just obliterated him, and Colby could do nothing in terms of its takedown, in terms of its grappling. So I mean, he had completely nullified him. Talk about the new generation of fighters that are coming into the UFC. Joaquin Buckley, he's not a traditional wrestler. I don't believe he wrestled in college. I'm almost sure he didn't, but he has developed that skill set and that base. And while you may not like him on the mic, he did have some interesting interviews that I thought he's starting to come into his own and show his personality. I think one of the things that everybody thought was really weird was when he called out Conor McGregor. It just fell flat on the ears of many fans, and maybe it left a bad taste in your mouth as well. But I think he's coming into his own. And I will say this, he is driven, he is hungry, and that comes through in the interviews. And you know how I like to hear these interviews a lot of times for inspiration. He's actually really inspiring. And so what he's done in this short period of time and what he's about to do, I think is really cool. So I agree. He is definitely the most improved fighter. Cool. We had not talked about any of these beforehand. So that's pretty interesting that we align on that one. Okay. Moving on to the next category, most delusional fighter. I only got one guy in mind for this.
I mean, there's only one.
I made this category just to highlight one guy in particular. Who is it?
Colby Covington.
It's Colby Covington. And listen, you know me, Justin. I have a tremendous amount of respect for any and all fighters, whether we're talking about Fusion Fight League, whether we're talking about the UFC. And I think that is actually necessary for fans of the sport, because most of us will never have the balls to get into the octagon or get even into a kickboxing match and do what you guys do. So you need to have, if you're a logical, normal person, you should have and must have a baseline level of respect for all these fighters. But let me tell you what's going on with Colby, where I just can't get behind anything that he does anymore. It's just, he's just come to this point. I made a video about this earlier in the week on the channel about Colby's tendencies. Who is he really? Is he this character? Is he somebody else? Has he become this character? I read a psychology paper as well on what happens to people when they go into method acting for a long time and how they can start to adopt traits of this quote unquote character that they're playing. It's very confusing with Colby, because sometimes like some of the things he says is so outlandish. I always felt like, well, he knows they're outlandish. He knows he obviously lost this fight to Joaquin Buckley. He's just saying this to elicit a response, but I don't know anymore. And then you add on to that, I actually am starting to think he is believing his own BS, or is like comfortable saying these things just to try and manipulate the public. But then you add on to it the really horrendous things that he said about Jorge Masvidal, about Leon Edwards and his father. Like, these are not normal things. These are things essentially that, I mean, I really hate to say, it's psychopathic levels of things that you would say to elicit a response. Sometimes he says, oh, we get in there and fight for a living, and you're upset about words. Those words probably have much more of a lasting and permanent effect on somebody like Leon Edwards, who was crying after the presser ended and had such a hard time. I had to talk to his mom. I listened to him talking about it in interviews. I mean, these types of things that he's doing are psychopathic and I think are uncalled for. He is setting a really bad example. And, you know, me and Justin, we both work with kids. Justin trains kids. I work with kids in mathematics. And he is setting a really bad example, I think, for kids and for people around the world. And I don't even see how it's a positive reflection on the UFC. Somebody goes in and spews this type of vitriol and venom towards other fighters and other people in the organization to such a point that he can't even stay in the fighter hotel because he's got no allies, getting kicked out of training camp to training camp. This is not how we want to be. And this is not the example we want to set. So I'm pretty much done with Colby Covington as a fighter. The only fight I want to see him take is Ian Gary, because if you're going to say all this stuff and torture somebody who, you know, you say what you will, you know, sometimes he'll say, hey, I'm saying the truth. I'm calling out people that are bad people. What's so bad about Ian Gary? You might not like his personal choices. Well, who cares about his personal choices? What's so bad about the guy? He's a good guy and he's a family guy, and you're going to attack him and blow him up and go after his wife and get people to turn on him. So it's, yeah, man, I just don't really, I don't really have anything positive to say about him, and I think he needs to fight Ian Gary, and I think the UFC needs to force his hand to do so, and offer him maybe whatever money will make him take that fight, and let's see it as a main event or a co-main event, and give Ian Gary the chance that he deserves to go out and fight a guy who said so many nasty things. All right, Justin, you can take it away now after that rant.
I wish I had something else to add to it, because you're exactly right, man. We're talking about, I got kids that watch. Hey, I come in, I run a kids program at Coutures. Hey, did you watch Colby Covington fight? Like, they're watching this guy fight. They're watching this guy on the mic. They're watching this guy. What they have to say, what he has to say, and it's not okay, man. It's not how we need to be raising our kids. The kids don't need to be acting like this. This isn't the WWE. At least with WWE, you can be like, oh, it's scripted, it's scripted. But the thing is, the UFC isn't scripted, so you don't know. Like, we don't know if that's really him or if it's his character, from his method acting, and it's like we don't know, and I just think it puts a bad example for kids, and I think Conor McGregor did it well too, because everyone wants to imitate him, and everyone's, oh, did you hear what Colby said? It's like, nah, I mean, whether I did or didn't, man, that's not how you want to approach. And I've actually sat with kids and I'm like, hey, listen, like, this is not the way to do this. This is not how you do this. This is not how it's worked for him. All right. People are like, oh, well, Chael Sonnen is a lot like him too. It's like, no, Chael Sonnen was way different. Chael Sonnen, he told Anderson Silva he sucked, but that's it, man. He never talked about, Anderson Silva's family, his kids, his wife. He just would talk shit to Anderson Silva, the fighter. And it was, I thought it was, some of it was way out there, but it was never, it might have bent some lines, but I don't feel it ever crossed any heavy lines. You know what I mean? It was a great build up. It was a PG-13 build up to the max. When you have Colby Covington talking about Ian Gary's wife and Ian Gary's wife's husband, and fuck that, man. That's just, dude, that's your personal life. Whatever you do in your personal life shouldn't be brought into the cage. Let your fist do the talking. If you want to sell a fight, take it to the fighter. Don't take it to his family.
The one good thing about it, and also I kind of now take issue with the fact that he even talks about law enforcement and all these things, because as given just everything that I've gone through in the last year, man, I am a massive supporter of law enforcement. I think they do a tremendous amount for us that we don't realize until we need them. And then you see how valuable and important they are to us. And I don't even appreciate somebody like Colby who says the things he does and carries himself the way he does and has it. And I'm going to show you a clip of what makes him so delusional in a second. But yeah, man, like when he goes out and tries to prop up these people that we should be propping up, I don't want to hear it coming from him, because now you're conflating this weird negative character and all these horrendous things you're saying with a positive message. And then it's just confusing, I feel like, especially for kids and people who are looking up to you. So anyways, it is what it is. The one positive thing I will say is that with all the negativity that he's engendered and the way he carries himself and the way he behaves and whatnot, at least it's kind of going the way it's going. And hopefully that will resonate with kids as well and other people and say, hey, this is not the way to be, because look at what's going down with Colby right now as he's appears to be entering somewhat of a downslide in his career. Okay, let's go to this quick clip. Anybody who did not watch the Joaquin Buckley fight, if you can get it on ESPN, check it out so you can see exactly how delusional Colby is right here. So this is him talking about, and one of his, he's now like doing live streams and he's like gambling and doing all this weird stuff, but he talks about the Joaquin Buckley fight. And again, it was a pure one-sided affair through and through. So let's check out Colby's reaction.
I's doing good, man. Just a couple stitches, I'll be back in no time, a couple weeks, I'll be fine, So I was already doing a little running today. I'm motivated, man. I want to prove people wrong. I mean, dude, that was a bullshit stoppage. Let's be honest, dude. Like, I was still in the fight. I was getting takedowns. He was getting slower. None of his punches did any significant damage, like drop me or hurt me. I just had one. I feel like there was an eye poke or something, like not an direct eye poke, but like an inadvertent one where the eye and the thumb got caught on the eyelid, and that's what caused the cut. So the cut's what did all the damage. I couldn't see. I was out of one eye, guys. So who's going to fight on one eye? Like, I'll always fight. I'm a warrior. That's what I signed up for. I love this shit. Let me go out on my shield, though. It's a bullshit stoppage, fake stoppage, another fucking cheat job, but we come back stronger. We never give up. Spirits aren't down. Still believe in the process and that we're going to keep winning fights and making America great again.
Okay, so there we go. You heard it straight. Just basically a bunch of nonsense. And yeah, we all at this part, I think we know for sure. I think deep down he's happy that the fight got stopped, because now he can say this and he can push for another fight and I'm sure he's trying to get the Wonder Boy fight or do whatever he wants. But let's go. fans.
I mean, you were upset with the stoppage. Don't you remember? You're like, man, I want to see it get worse because you said this is exactly what's going to happen. Oh, well, I was happy because I got, I made the money from the bet, but I agree with you 100%. You said it, you hit it spot on. You hit the nail on the head, man. You're like, I hate this stoppage because this is what he's going to say. It's a bullshit stoppage, and that's exactly what he's doing. So
Joaquin Buckley was good. I for sure think he was going to get the knockout. In fact, I said I thought he was going to win by knockout before. I thought he was going to win in the first 2 rounds or something like that. So I was wrong on that front. I don't think I said it live on the show, but that's what my thought was. So I guess it was probably going to be in the 4th round. I for sure think he was going to knock him out in the 4th round. And that would have been, I think, one of the few times that Kobe's ever been knocked out. I can't remember another time. There may have been earlier.
I can't even think he ever been. Yeah. I don't think he's ever been knocked out.
And Western Mass Climber said, did he say a thumb cut his eyelid? Yeah. I don't know. It's just crazy. You guys can check out my video. I tried to do a deep dive analysis of like what's really going on with Kobe, because I always felt like all the nonsense and BS that he was saying was intentional just to incite anger and get people riled up so they'd tune in and like hate him more. But now I don't know, man. You go back to old interviews and everybody who knew him back in the day, including Tyron Woodley, who had an interview recently, they all just said he's a piece of crap. He's a constant liar. And so I'm like, well, that's kind of the character that he portrays. But people said that before he was taking on this character. So I don't really know what came first. It's a chicken or the egg question. Bottom line is, I just think he sets a bad example. Most delusional fighter. Let's move on to more good, positive stuff. Okay, now we're moving on to the best fight of the year. And I didn't really like go back and think and watch a bunch of fights and think through, hey, this fight or that fight. I just kind of am going with my gut here because there's one fight that stands out above them all in terms of the emotional response and reaction that it gave me. And I know what you're thinking. I know you're thinking the Hamzat Robert Whittaker. Well, I think it was.
I think for you. Can I guess what yours is?
Go for it.
If it's not gonna, does it have Hamzat in it?
No.
Okay, then it's Alex Pereira and Khalil Roundtree. I bet.
Yeah, that's it. That's the fight.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah,
I know
that's the fight. Okay,
that's my guy.
So I'm gonna tell you why, and then Justin, I want to turn over to you now. It's tough to choose. There were a ton of amazing fights, and Hamzat was a fight that I was so excited about. That was one fight that I actually bet money on and won because I knew Hamzat was going to win. But I normally don't bet because I enjoy the fights so much, regardless of any like financial gain, right? But that fight was incredible, and it showed a lot, and it was really special. But if I'm truly honest about the emotional arc and the way that I felt about one particular fight and how excited and amazing it was Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree for several reasons. I'm going to tell you why. So firstly, the fight, I was not sure what to expect. And I kind of thought Alex Pereira was going to steamroll Khalil Roundtree. I thought in the stand-up, it was going to be a pure stand-up game. Alex was going to have a clear advantage, etc. And I think Alex did go in with some injuries, by the way. I can't remember the specifics, but I believe they mentioned that after the fight. Instead, to my surprise, and I think many fans' surprise, Khalil Roundtree was amazing, and he won rounds 1 and 2 by all the judges' scorecards. Won rounds 1 and 2. So for massive fans of Alex Pereira like me and Justin, when you love a fighter that much, and we look up to him, we respect him. He's just the ultimate. He's just the ultimate all the way around. He's got extreme heart. He takes all these short notice fights. Maybe he shouldn't have, right? Like, and a lot of people would argue he shouldn't have, but he came through, didn't complain, didn't say a word, and just went in and smoked the guy, right? Jamal Hill, whoever they asked him to fill in on
Jamal's 2 feet. So, I mean, obviously.
Yeah, right. No. But you know, and so he is just coming in win after win after win, and he's only been in the UFC for just a handful of years. And you just look at the way he carries himself, just so, even though he doesn't speak English and we can't connect to him in that way, but have you ever heard a single person say one bad word about him? He is a role model through and through. He comes through with that toughness and the grit. He's a role model in the way he fights and in the way he carries himself. So somebody like that, he's just so beloved by the world and by fans, including us. And then you see him go through this tremendous adversity. I was freaking out. I thought he was going to lose. And I thought that was going to be such a travesty, just given he doesn't have to fight 3 times this year. He's the champ. Very few champs do what he's doing. And he fought while injured in many of those fights and on short notice, but he's doing it and he's stepping up. And so I think everybody wanted him to win so badly. So that's what made it such an impactful fight for me, going on that arc. And then seeing him come back around after losing the first 2 rounds and then put it on Khalil Roundtree so badly in the third round, just by the end of the third round. And I think Khalil even was like, what is happening? He's like getting faster. He's getting stronger as the fight's going on, which is insane. And then that fourth round performance, oh my God. And just watching the whole thing unravel, Khalil being so tough and so gritty and sticking to his guns and still fighting back and staying in there until finally Alex drops him. So that entire story arc and that build up and the climax of him getting the knockout and getting the victory and just retaining that belt and defending it successfulully, it was just the coolest. To me, that was the most memorable moment of the entire year. All right, Justin, take it away. Was that yours? You got something else?
No, I mean, that was an incredible fight. But I'm going to go generic UFC 300, Holloway and Gaethje, and I'm going to tell you why. I mean, obviously, it was an incredible knockout. But the thing that I loved about this fight the most is not that he knocked him out in the last 5 seconds after an all-out war. It's everybody counted Max Holloway out going into this fight, going up against a bigger, powerful knockout artist like Justin Gaethje, who knocks everybody out. You know, I counted Max Holloway out. I believe you counted Max Holloway out. I said, hey, man, I think it's going to be a great fight, but I think Justin's just going to be too big, too powerful. He's going to bully Max around. He's going to land those shots. But to my surprise, Max looked incredible at lightweight, and I'm really looking forward to him moving to lightweight because he looked much better at lightweight than he did against Ilia Topuria at featherweight. You know, we're talking about arguably one of the greatest featherweights of all time, going up to lightweight, testing his skills against a top 5 opponent, not only a top 5 opponent, but a knockout artist, a guy that knocks out everybody. I was so impressed with Max Holloway's performance, and that's why he's one of my favorite fighters of all time.
By the way, we're mentioning these two fights. There were so many other fights, too, that I really, really enjoyed. Even John Jones' fight, whatever people want to say, against Stipe was one of my favorite fights of the year. I think Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje, especially, the whole fight was great, but the way it ended was crazy. I was jumping out of my seat.
Let's take that knockout out of it, though. Even if that fight, he doesn't knock him out in the last 5 seconds, I still love that fight, and I love the perseverance Max did because everybody, including me, counted him out. Justin Gaethje, my number 1 favorite fighter. Max Holloway, 2 or 3 for me, you know, if I think about it. I mean, we talked about it on the show. There's no way he can win, man. He's too small, and Justin's going to be too powerful. He proved me wrong. He beat my favorite guy. He proved you wrong, I believe. And I think he proved all the doubters wrong, too. And there's nothing I like more than a Cinderella story when some guy, you know, pushes his way through the ashes and he finds a way to triumph against him. It's a David and Goliath situation, and David came through in that situation.
And I got to say, by the way, these have to be, I don't care who you are and how you're trying to do these rankings. I actually think these rankings should be, like, if we're talking about our favorite fight of the year, the best fight of the year, it needs to be somewhat subjective because the way you look at the fighters individually in terms of how you connect with them and how much you like them and look up to them, it's going to influence how you feel about the fight. But as Absolutely. It should, I think, Absolutely. And that's good. I think that's a part of the sport and a part of the fandom. So for me, it's the only other person that comes close to that Alex Pereira moment, despite like the high quality of all these other fights that were just brilliant and amazing. The only fight that can rival that for me, because I'm such a fan of Khamzat Chimaev, would be Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker. But again, it's only because Khamzat was so dominant almost that the Alex Pereira one takes the cake, because you saw him battle through adversity and come back and then just show out in rounds 3 and 4. So it was just absolutely incredible. All right,
guys, I also want to apologize. I coach high school wrestling, and I have a hard stop at 3. I'm just getting stuff ready for my dogs right now. You saw me eating earlier. I know it's unprofessional. I'm really sorry about that. But unfortunately, I'm on a time right here, and I'm trying to do 3 things at once just to make sure we get this show done. So I apologize ahead of time for this, guys.
No worries. All right, so we're almost done here. We said Western Max Slammer got a couple comments, and then we're going to move on to the final 2 categories. Khalil had a pretty good first 2 rounds. You predicted Khalil to win. Wow, that's wild. I mean, we saw that actually it was a decent prediction now knowing what happened in retrospect, but that's very interesting. And Western Mass Climber said he also believed in Max over Justin. All right, well, you knew. Legend. And now we go to our final
category. No. Western Mass Climber, you need to start putting some money down because it seems like you're right every time. I need to start following your bets.
Okay, now we're going to go to the best UFC events of the entire year. Hold on, I'm going to pull up all the UFC events, and I thought we could kind of go through. Or Justin, I don't know if you already have one in mind, and I kind of do have one in mind, but I thought we could just kind of review quickly the main cards. Do you have one, or you want me to quickly pop this up here and go through it?
Yeah, I'd like you to go through them because I don't remember. I mean, I can recall fights, but I can't recall what card they were on.
Yep. All right, here we go. So we're going to check this out. Boom. So, of course, we started the year off with the Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis 1. And there's the card. Oh, Chris Curtis was on there as well. And I'm skipping the fight nights. Then we have Ilya Topuria, Alexander Volkanovski. That was a great fight. And that was when Robert Whittaker also beat Paulo Costa. To me, I mean, look, these are all great cards, but these aren't any of the ones that I was thinking about for my favorite. Now we go to UFC 299. Ooh, that's when Sean O'Malley smoked Marlon. See, I forgot that even happened. He annihilated Chito Vera. We had Dustin Poirier come out. Everybody thought counting him out against Benoit Saint-Denis. Michael Venom Page against Kevin Holland. Decent fight. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the big dog. And of course, this is one where you kind of need to go deeper than the main event. But just looking at this fight, Alex Pereira dominated, and it kind of got brushed under the rug because of the performance between Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje. But that was a dope knockout. It was just so sad. Like, you have a first round knockout that was just legendary, and now everybody's talking about something else. Weili Zhang, that was an interesting fight. Obviously Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway. Oh, we forgot Charles Oliveira, Armin Tsarukyan, and then we had this Cody Brundage fight versus Bone Nickel, of course. Okay, that's UFC 310, 301. Actually, I'm changing my vote right as we're doing this because I was going to go one way. Now I think I'm going to go another. Okay, then we had Pantoja versus Steve Erceg. I don't think either of us are going to pick 301. I hate to say. Let's keep it rolling. 302. Oh yeah, I forgot this fight card.
Oh, that was an awesome fight. That was an awesome fight.
Yeah, and Sean Strickland comes out with the decision against Paulo Costa, lining up his second title shot here. Kevin Holland won. Nico Price versus Alex Moreno. I remember this fight. I remember thinking Alex Moreno's like striking looks really unorthodox. I think we had talked about it on the show. It was very interesting. UFC 303 again. Alex Pereira popping up again against Yuri Prohaska. Amazing early second round finish from Alex. We also had Diego Lopez show up and show out against Dan Ige on like 4-hour notice. Your boy Dan Ige. Roman Delise, another one of your training partners. Hold on, I'm losing my voice here. I've been talking so much this week. UFC 304. Bilal gets the belt back in July. Tom Aspinall wins or defends his interim title against Curtis Blaydes. Paddy Pimblett won that fight. This was a pretty good fight card. Yeah, I don't think you're going to agree with me here on my pick. This is when Dricus defeats Israel at UFC 305. That was amazing. Oh, next we have the Sphere when Merab, your boy Merab, beat Sean O'Malley. That was a wild night, and that entire event was crazy. Diego Lopez also did awesome. Valentina Shevchenko, people weren't so impressed with the fight, I guess. I thought it was still a great fight. She did a tremendous job. UFC 30. Did I skip 307? Sorry. 307. Alex Pereira back again. Third time headlining. Oh my God. Against Khalil Roundtree. We had Juliana Pena get the belt. That was cool. Jose Aldo lost, and Roman Delise beat Kevin Holland. Kayla Harrison also won as well. 308. We're getting near to the end. That was that massive knockout of Max Holloway. First time he's ever been knocked out. Also, Hamzat Chimaev dominates in there. Magomed Ankalaev and Rakic. That was a great fight too. Laurent Murphy, Dan Ige.
What number is this? 310?
This is 308. 308. Two left here. Two left here. 309. John Jones. We had Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. Bo Nickel. People were really upset about Bo Nickel's performance there. Yeah, and then last but not least, we've got UFC 310. That's what we just saw. Great card too, by the way. Shavkat Rakhmonov in Machado Gary. Boom, boom, boom. All right, Justin, take it away. Do you have a pick?
I'm going to say 308, man. I forget about these cards, but when we pull them up, we look at this, Ilya Topuria, Max Holloway. Obviously, I made a video on Max. Huge Max fan. Ilya comes in, stuns me, man. I couldn't believe it. Being an old school guy, an original watcher, I always root for the old dogs. And, sometimes I get a little bit too much support. These upcoming fighters are just insane. Then you look at Robert Whittaker and Hamzat, man. Again, I thought Robert was going to fucking give this guy problems. Hamzat come in there again, that new breed of fighter coming there and breaking his jaw, breaking his teeth. Then you got Magomed Ankalaev. Man, again, people talk about the wrestling base. He kept it a standing war. Leon Murphy, against Dan Ige. I'm going to choose that one. Leon was undefeated going into this fight. It was 1-1 going into the third. And, unfortunately for Dan, he loses the decision. But, man, every fight on that card was just stacked, man. Leon Murphy is when I started watching the card, and I couldn't get my eyes off it.
We also had the Bullet, Sharp Bullet, have the double back fist knockout. Remember that? Yeah, I actually 100% agree. So when I was coming into this, I was thinking UFC 300 was going to be my call.
Yeah, me too.
And then even John Jones, UFC 309 was amazing. So I was like that. But again, this is all just like recency bias. Now going back, it's got to be this one. Ilya with the legendary knockout in round 3 of Max Holloway's never been finished. Khamzat Chimaev shows up and shows out and shows the world that he is likely the most dangerous fighter the UFC has ever had grace the octagon, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but that was insane what he did to Robert Whittaker, and people are finally giving him his due credit, which is incredible. Ankalaev, that was a dope fight. LaRon Murphy is an extremely talented and athletic individual, so that was really cool. This fight almost happened, but that would have been dope if that happened. And Shar Bullet with the double back fist knockout, which has never been seen, I believe, in the UFC. Okay, here we go. And now we're on to the final category, Fighter of the Year. Everybody's been talking about this category and basically saying, well, a lot of people have been saying it comes down to one or two people, Ilia Topuria or Alex Pereira. But I don't know if you agree or disagree. I've got mine in mind. Justin, take it away.
That's exactly how I feel, man. Alex doing as much as he's done in the short window that he's had to do it, it's just incredible. Now you look at Ilia Topuria, he's knocked out 2 of the best featherweights of all time. To my surprise, after he knocked out Volkov, Alexander Volkanovski, he's like, I was like, well, he's coming off a knockout from Islam, which still did play a factor. But then to go against Max Holloway after that incredible performance against Justin Gaethje and knock him out, man. I mean, it's a toss-up right now, and I know it's generic, and I've given you a whole bunch of generic answers today. But that's just what it is, man. You can't. There's no who else. Like nobody's done what Alex has in the amount of time he's done it, and nobody's knocked out 2 legends back to back. And it's not like they're legends. They were legends 10 years ago. These are recent legends, and he just comes in and slays them. Like when Anderson Silva went on his downswing, like, oh, he beat Anderson Silva. Oh, well, he's on his downfall. Volkanovski wasn't on his downfall yet. Holloway definitely wasn't on his downfall, coming off that huge win out of Justin Gaethje that everyone counted him against. So to go in there and beat these guys when they're at their best, not on their downfall, is just incredible to me. And I think Ilya is an incredible fighter. I'm not a huge fan of him, not because I think again, great fighter. I just can't resonate with him on the mic. I don't hate the guy. I'll watch him fight. I just don't like his style on the mic, and I wish him the best in his career. Of course, as always. Again, just not my type of guy on the mic, but again, Fighter of the Year. I mean, Ilia Topuria, fuck, man, the things he's done this year are just incredible and just amazing.
All right, I'm going the other way, as you might have predicted, and Western Mass Climber is saying it well right here. I give it to Alex for strength of schedule and saving events. Yeah, it's that, but it's more than that. It's also he finished every fight the way he and just watching the skill that he has. Also watching the fact that how new he is to the UFC and to mixed martial arts. Ilia Topuria, I mean, not that this should be a negative against Ilia, but Ilya's been training grappling and fighting his entire life. He's a lifelong martial artist. Alex Pereira is a kickboxer that has transitioned to MMA, but has acquired these skills in such a short amount of time that actually I thought it was all a sham when he was entering the UFC. I thought they brought him in and he was not going to, I thought Izzy was going to beat him because Izzy had so much more time grappling and developing that side of his game. Yet he proved us wrong. He beat Izzy, loses to Izzy, moves up a division, claims that title, and then shows up and shows out. Plus, many of his victories were on short notice that I don't think people are mentioning as well. I mean, that is incredible. He was injured in 2 of those fights, at least, maybe all 3. And to go out and still do what he did and do so in such amazing fashion and give us such incredible fights, I think it's got to be Alex Pereira. He's my Fighter of the Year. He is maybe I just can't go above Khamzat, but I guess he's my second favorite fighter in the UFC. But yeah, man, he's absolutely incredible, and I think and I also think he's an awesome guy and a great role model, so he deserves all the success. And yeah, I'm just thrilled for him.
Yeah, I agree with you, man, and I can't even argue with you because again, that's my second choice. And you know what? It's not even my second choice. It's my tied for my first choice. Like I just can't. You can't say enough about these guys. Like how can you say who's done more or who's? Sorry again, guys. I'm getting ready to. I have a 2-hour drive ahead of me. I have to be in Mesquite by 5 o'clock. So sorry about how I did the show today. I know it was very unprofessional, but unfortunately, I have obligations to these kids. But anyways, yeah, dude, man, I obviously agree with you. He's a freaking stud, man. He's one of my favorite fighters, and I don't even like Ilia Topuria that much.
Oh, We lost Justin. I think he may have gotten a call. Okay. When he comes back, we'll let him finish his thoughts, but we're going to move on because I know Justin's got to go in 5 minutes. We're going to move on to the final thing that we're going to wrap up 2024 with, and that is predictions for the greatest fight in 2025. And there are two that I'm going back and forth between that I think are going to be both are going to be the biggest fights in the history of the UFC. And I know, Justin, I'm going to the final topic. I know we lost you mid-thought, but here's the thing. We're going to talk about 2025. I know you got to get on the road.
No, you're fine. I mean, I might just have sketchy service, but it should be fine for a little while.
It's all good. We got like a couple minutes. We're going to name our what we think is the greatest fight in 2025. And I got my prediction. And it's kind of tied with something else, but I'm going to choose one over the other. And now I know Dana White's been talking about this fight with John Jones and what's called Tom Aspinall, saying that'll be the biggest heavyweight fight of all time, maybe the greatest fight of all time. But that comes second. Okay, sorry, we lost Justin again. That comes second to me. There's one fight that I think is going to be bigger, at least to me, right? Hey, it's somewhat subjective, but I believe it will be bigger. Definitely be bigger to me, and I think it could be bigger in general because we're going to see the rise of somebody brand new. And what is more exciting than to watch a fighter on the come up that we think could be the greatest fighter of all time, and I believe is the greatest fighter of all time? That biggest fight of the year of 2025 will undoubtedly be Khamzat Chimaev, either versus Sean Strickland or Dricus du Plessis. I wouldn't be surprised if they do Dricus versus Khamzat in South Africa. That'd be insane. But I actually think it's going to be in Saudi. I think the reason why Khamzat was not chosen to fight Dricus now, no disrespect to Sean Strickland, but I think the reason why is the timing did not work out. And I think they want Khamzat to show up and show out in either Riyadh or the UAE. And that is going to be a massive event. I cannot wait. And depending how that plays out, if Khamzat goes in there and dominates like I think he will, it's going to explode all throughout the world. And even if it doesn't top the records for most pay-per-view buys and biggest gate and whatnot, I think the after effects of the dominance of the victory will show it to be probably the most impactful fight of all time in the history of the UFC. All right, Justin, take it away. What's your prediction for the greatest fight in 2025?
Ooh, this one's an easy one for me, man. We're talking about the best pound-for-pound fighter on the rank list. Who is it?
Is it Islam?
Islam Makhachev versus Bilal. Yep. That's the fight. That is going to be when we talk about greatness. We're talking about the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now. He's the 155-pound champ. He has talked and expressed interest in going up to 170 and running through that division. And there's nothing more than I'd like to see Islam Makhachev go up to 170 and destroy Bilal Muhammad. Again, I don't know why I don't like the guy, besides the fact that he's just terrible on the mic. I don't know, man. I like Islam a lot. I like that he's learning English. I like he has a personality. Bilal's personality is just so boring to me. And when I see someone like Islam, you know, who's following in Khabib's footsteps and he wants that double gold, and I just think it's so impressive if you can go up there and, you know, just get someone to get Bilal off the mic. Like, please take the mic away from Bilal. Like, he would just be so much better if he didn't speak English. You know what I mean? Like, I think I just have so much more respect for him if he didn't speak English, because, you know, he could just shut the fuck up and stop. His trash talk is just so cringy. And God, man, the guy can fight. The guy, his striking is improving all the time. His grappling, his wrestling, he's an incredible fighter. But his trash talk is just so cringy. It, like, as soon as they hand him the mic, I turn the TV off because it hurts my ears to listen to this guy talk. So my favorite fight, and I predict that my prediction of that fight is Islam is going to be bigger and stronger than he ever has before, and he's going to go in there and wipe out the 170-pound division as well.
So it's interesting because, you know, Bilal and Islam are boys, and they at one point said they did not want to fight, but now we don't know. They might. And even Habib said, listen, my heart says I don't want to see it, but if they want to do it, they need to sit down. We're going to have a conversation. If Islam wants to do it, they're going to do it, and we're just going to roll with it. So it actually could happen. How likely it is, we don't know, and we'll have to see, and it depends on what happens between Bilal and Shavkat, right? That's going to be a major deciding factor in terms of what goes down. But, okay, well, there you go. There you have it. That's it for 2024, guys. Thank you so much. But this does not mean we're taking a break. We're still banging out content. We got a lot of stuff, but we want to do our year-end review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We didn't do this last year, but it was pretty fun. Justin, thank you so much, and good luck at wrestling practice. And guys, we are on the rise. If you did like this video, please click that like button, but most importantly, make sure to click subscribe. We are growing fast, and we want you to be a part of the ride. All right? Thank you guys so much, and we will see you in the next video. Take it easy.